Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting now our second session of presentations of working groups. And for that, I am pleased to invite Mr. Daniel Mariaschin, Executive Vice President of Bnei Brief International, to moderate this panel. Please.
Thank you, Gidon, and thank you and your staff for all the work that you did in bringing this very important two-day meeting together. Even in the internet age, there is no substitute for sitting together to take stock, to share information, and to share best practices. And for sure, we've been able to do that over the past couple of days. Perhaps the equally important in this, the meetings that have taken place in the corridors, outside, at the breakfast table, at dinner, of course, add to the opportunity for all of us to network and to come together on these issues that affect all of us in the Jewish world, and especially the State of Israel. The co-chairs of the working groups on this panel are certainly known to all of us. They represent organizations, publications, and institutions dedicated for so many years to combating anti-Semitism in its traditional and in its more current forms. And we are indebted to each of them for the important work that they do every day. Now, this morning, we have a daunting task before us covering 5 continents, or perhaps 6 continents, depending on where you draw the map, in 1.5 hours. And the ground rules have been made very clear to me and to the participants. 15-minute presentations. We hope there will be some time for Q&A, as there was in the previous session. And the most important thing is that we have to conclude by 12:55. I don't have a gavel here, but I will maybe use my water bottle to call an end to this session by 12:55. We have speakers at lunch, and then, of course, the Speaker of the Knesset will be joining us a little bit later. I want to do this. Now, as you know, co-chairs, only one of the co-chairs for each of these working groups will present. But in the interest of time, I just want to go through very quickly the introductions of all of them, so you know who they are. There's more information about each in your book, in the program, but I think it's important to do this in person as well. So on anti-Semitism in the Muslim and Arab world, Boaz Ganor, Dr. Boaz Ganor, holds the Ronald Lauder Chair for Counterterrorism at the Interdisciplinary Center. The IDC also is dean there and holds many other positions. Itamar Marcus, many of us wake up in the morning, at least those of us in the United States, wake up to the daily email from Palestinian Media Watch. Itamar is the founder and director of that very important monitoring organization. Anti-Semitism in Latin America. The co-chairs are Sami Eppel. Sami is a journalist, a documentary maker, Jewish community activist in Venezuela, and a good friend to many of us. And Sergio Witter, the longtime director for Latin America for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Anti-Semitism in the former Soviet Union and the Eastern European region. The co-chairs are Leslie Weiss, the director for Community Services and Cultural Affairs at NCSJ, and Dr. Tomáš Kraus, the executive director of the Federation of Jewish Communities of the Czech Republic. And anti-Semitism in the EU and the Western European region, co-chairs are Mike Wine, Governmental and International Affairs Director for the UK's Community Security Trust, and Mark Nobel, a senior researcher at CRIF in Paris, an expert on, among other subjects, Islamic and extreme right movements. So we will get right to the presentations, and we will begin with Itamar Marcus.
Thank you very much, and I want to open, of course, thanking the Foreign Ministry and everyone who put this together, and especially want to thank Boaz Ganor for the great cooperation and the work we did in preparing this and in preparing this action plan. The first thing that must be done and this is somewhat known, is the definition of what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. Demonization of the people or the essence of Israel or Jews is illegitimate. Criticizing policies is legitimate. So, for example, criticizing Israel's building in Jerusalem, whether you agree with it or think it's bad, it's legitimate. But defining the Jews as Satan, enemies of Allah, or Israel stole Palestine and has no right to exist, that is illegitimate. It's attacking the essence as opposed to the policy. Now, I open with this, even though it's known, because we see that understanding this or recognizing this turns out to be one of the key problems. And that's what we heard over and over again from the three Muslims who presented to our group. Now, and what they said and what we learned, there are two great dangers that we face in this category of anti-Semitism. The first is the existence of the hate ideologies. There are dangerous, threatening ideologies, denying Israel the right to exist, denying Jews the right to exist, seeing Jews as a source of evil in the world. And it also goes beyond with a lot of these extreme ideologies, denying Christians, etc., some of these same rights as well. But what we heard from the Muslims who spoke in our group is that the problem isn't just these beliefs, the problem is the Jews' reactions to these beliefs, specifically denying the existence of these beliefs, denying that the problem is an ideology of hatred. Turning this around to recognizing that this is a key problem is one of the key things, and not recognizing it is one of the great impediments to peace. Now, why is this happening? Why are people so reluctant to recognize these dangers? There's a great desire, it seems, to see these global threats not as hate ideologies, but as grievances. If they're grievances, we can solve the grievances. If they're ingrained hate ideologies, what do you do with the hate ideologies? Let's pretend it's the grievances. The PA, the Palestinian Authority, tells its people that Israel stole Palestine. Israel has no right to exist. That Israel exists not because Jews have a history in the land, but Israel exists because the Europeans suffered so much from the Jews, because the Jews are innately evil, that they stole Palestine to dump away the Jews. That is Palestinian Authority ideology. PA tells the world they're angry at Israel because of its policies. What does the world do? What does the Jewish community and many Israeli leaders do? They accept the Palestinian smokescreen. They accept that it's these grievances, ignoring the hate ideology that's there, and it perpetuates and gives legitimacy to the hate ideology. We heard that one of the biggest problems from a Muslim in UK, he said that one of the biggest problems in the UK is the Jewish community, which isn't backing him up. He is a Muslim, and he's fighting anti-Semitism, and he grew up hating Jews. Now he's fighting it, and the Jewish community isn't backing him up. They're denying the reality that he's pointing out. They're denying what he's saying he was just a few years ago. And that becomes the basic problem. The Israeli Arab who wrote to us, because he couldn't make it at the last moment, he said that one of the biggest problems is that the Israeli government continues to fund imams in all the mosques in Israel, and those imams don't recognize, and they preach not to recognize Israel's right to exist. They're funding the schools, and the schools are places for open hatred. So we're hearing from the people who left the hatred that it's the West, it's Israel's response, it's Jews' response to the hatred, the denial, the ignoring, is actually a major, major part of the problem. This reminds me, and I'll just repeat this known story of the people of Chelm. Someone walks along and he sees a man near a lamppost at night under the light, and he's searching for something. So he walks over, he says, "What'd you lose?" "I lost my wallet." He says, "I'm going to help you." And they're searching around for the wallet near the light under the lamppost. And then finally, the friend who just came along says, "Are you sure you lost a wallet here? We can't find it." He says, "No, I didn't lose it here. I lost it over there. But it's too dark over there, so I'm not looking over there." The world today is in this chelm. We're searching and dealing with problems that are under the light, that the Palestinians are claiming, that the apologists for Islam are claiming. They're searching the light, but the real problem in the darkness is totally being ignored because it's too hard to find it and too hard to deal with it. Now, that's the problem on our side. And because it's our problem, we have to work to solve it. The way they described how they were working to solve the problem on the Muslim side is that basically they're is the problem of the radicals who preach. They're the core. They're the problem of a second group that join them and they're convinced by the hatred. And there's the third group, and those are the masses who sit back and are quiet, and they're quiet for a number of reasons. One, possibly they believe that maybe these really are truths of the Quran, and therefore they're afraid to go out against them. Two, going out against this hatred creates isolation. And three, they're afraid of retribution. So it's this isolation, this allowing these people to speak, these core people, and then to get people around them, the second core, to continue to flourish and not be challenged, is what they see as a major, major problem. How are they working to resolve this within their communities? The good news is that they have said that when they identify the hatred and expose the hatred and can show, they as Muslims, not us as Jews, but when they as Muslims can come to other Muslims and show them the truth, they see people are willing to turn around. What that means for us is that we have a challenge to identify those Muslims within the Muslim community who are really doing their own outreach within their communities, be they in universities, and they're small and they're few. They feel like they're isolated right now. We have to help them to turn from isolated fighters into communities of fighters. Muslim youth and Israeli Arab youth have to learn that there is an alternative, that there's a real alternative, that they're not joining with the enemy because they recognize and defend Israel's right to exist. We have to empower those people who have started fighting, and there are isolated ones who have started. We, as Jews, can only help from the distance, but we have to give them whatever logistic support that can be. They have to be able to be, like Qasim who spoke yesterday, they have to be as able to be proud fighting for the rights of Jews as they once were proud to feel that they were part of a supremacist group, because those are the key emotions that's the key emotion that's playing here. Again, within this group, we have to differentiate between the core, the people who are preaching, the second group that is joining, and then the masses who are quiet. The core group has to be fought with complete isolation. Let's not waste our energy on them other than isolating, exposing, and when possible, when they've crossed certain lines, actually prosecuting when that happens. The others, and based on certain experiences, the others can be convinced with proper information. It's not going to happen 1, 2, 3, but that is the way. Everybody who spoke and everybody who's experienced the change in their lives said it was through information and through learning and being exposed to the truth. So they see their challenge on the individual Muslim level to teach their Muslim brothers the truth, and our tactic or our hope or our job is to give them and empower them, to enable them to get to the truth. The core group, those core groups, as we heard from the Israeli Arab, are being funded by the Israeli government. The core groups of hate are being funded by the Israeli government. The Israeli government, the Western powers, have to stop funding of these forces that are undermining us terribly. On the international level, what this means is that all of these countries, all of these people, all these organizations who are promoting this hatred can no longer be funded. None of them could exist without funding. Today with what's called the Arab Spring, and we won't discuss the name, but what's called the Arab Spring, and the incredible dependence of all of these countries on Western funding and the incredible dependence of the Palestinian Authority on Western funding, we have an incredible opportunity. They cannot even take one step today without constant flow of Western funding. That creates an opportunity to not only say, stop this hatred that we can see it, but stop it everywhere. Stop it, demand a change. They're not going to agree right away, but let's see how long they can manage. Let's see how long the PA can manage, not paying salaries, not having anything, until they're forced to change. Let's see how long Egypt can go without getting funding, and these other countries. Again, their financial crisis creates an opportunity. The funding on the international level is the key right now, is a key opportunity to demand a change of the hatred from the top. And the final thing that was mentioned is that there are many groups, not only Jews, who are suffering from radical Islamic hatred, be they Christians who are being murdered regularly in Arab countries, Baha'i, Ahmadians, and others. we should work with those groups, join with those groups. Together with those groups, and together again working within the communities, we can hopefully make a difference. Thank you.